Morning, this is Ian R. Crane. It's the morning of Friday, 30th of November 2018, and where's the year gone? So much has happened. Well, I'm still on the edge of the Lancashire moors here, taking my morning constitutional. It's a little bit fresher than it was yesterday. The warm wind gusting at some 30 mile an hour yesterday was lifting the temperature to about 13 degrees. But this morning it's a much more seasonal 6 or 7 degrees here, and fortunately I've got a bit of protection with the wall alongside me, but there's still a bit of a bite to this wind. Anyway, whatever my situation, I'm certainly a whole lot better off than prisoner A7081DY, otherwise known as David Noakes, and I will be posting the address which you can write to David Noakes at Wandsworth prison under this video this morning. And if you feel so moved and motivated to write to him, let's make sure that David gets a massive mailbag, and because all the letters are obviously read by the prison authorities, let's make it very, very clear to the establishment that David has massive support from the wider public, and it is acknowledged that he has been jailed for taking on the corporatocracy and for saving phenomenal numbers of lives. And as Justice Nicholas Lorraine Smith observed as he started the sentencing proceedings on Tuesday, he said he had no doubt that many people had benefited from GCMAF and would do so in the future. He also made it very, very clear that GCMAF was not on trial. And the reason that neither the judge nor the prosecution really wanted to probe into the efficacy of GCMAF was because they knew very, very well that the overwhelming evidence would be that it proved to be beneficial. And the media coverage, the mainstream or lamestream media coverage, has been absolutely shocking. And of course, that's no surprise, but why would they ever let the facts get in the way of a good story? And the person who probably should hang their head in absolute shame the most is Dr. Syria Arson. Bit unfortunate that she has lie and arse in her name, but her contribution to what has unfolded over the last 2 weeks is very much at the fore. The MHRA have stated, well, through Mr. Archibald, the former detective chief inspector of Surrey and Sussex Police, who stated in an interview that the BBC programme back in 2015, I believe it was, had been instrumental in the MHRA investigation. And Dr. Syria Arson, of course, she's on the BBC payroll because she also has demonstrated that she is not prepared to let the facts or do any research to get in the way of putting out a good story. And who is she? Well, she's a former British Army captain who served in Bosnia. So, once on the payroll. But she also has a master's degree in international human rights and humanitarian law, and works as a freelance filmmaker reporting on stories concerning healthcare in the UK and around the world. Well, she has a really interesting take, obviously, on human rights and humanitarian law, because in her myopic worldview, you do not have a human right to access an extremely effective treatment if you are suffering from cancer or another serious illness or disease which is proven to go into remission if you take GCMAF. And she went to Syria, and the BBC went with her. What a surprise. And in that, she refers to the conflict in Syria as a civil war, which actually just goes to show how shallow her research or her knowledge really is, because there ain't nothing civil about the war in Syria. It's an attempt by the corporatocracy to bring about regime change. They've never made any real secret of that, except of course in the lamestream media, hoping that the gullible masses won't actually do any more research. So Salaya Arson, you know, you have certainly, and I'm sure you're very proud of it, had a central role to play, it would seem, according to the MHRA, in what transpired this week. And, you know, let's acknowledge that, you know, what David has done here is nothing more serious than challenge the dominance of Big Pharma and the corporations and their henchmen, the MHRA. And, you know, he got 15 months for saving lives. So I just did a cursory search earlier this morning to look at the situation regarding knife crime, because if you believe everything you read in the mainstream media, then basically you can't walk down a road without being, you know, threatened with a machete. And here's what I've picked up. Where an offender is convicted of threatening with a bladed article or an offensive weapon, the court must impose a mandatory minimum sentence of 6 months imprisonment for an adult or 4 months detention and a training order for a youth, unless satisfied there are circumstances relating to the offence or the offender that make it unjust to do so in all of the circumstances. And what are those? Well, strong personal mitigation, where there is a strong prospect of rehabilitation, or whether custody will result in significant impact upon others. Well, in this situation, there is absolutely no question that David's custody is going to have a very significant impact on others, because what it is doing is raising the awareness of GCMAF. It's raising awareness of the role of the MHRA. Let me rephrase that. It's raising awareness of the criminal activities of the MHRA. They are perpetrating crimes against humanity, as is Dr. Salaya Arson, by effectively whoring herself out to the media outlets to attempt to push the corporatocratic agenda, which is to shut down anything which challenges their dominion, and certainly anything which would have a significant impact on the health and well-being of people. And just to put this in perspective, every 4 minutes someone in the UK dies from cancer. Lung, bowel, breast and prostate cancers accounting for almost half. So just think about that. One person in the UK dies from cancer every 4 minutes. David Noakes had a tremendous track record of enhancing the quality of life from people who were suffering life-threatening or debilitating illnesses. There were some minor side effects, nothing serious. If there had been, then obviously the prosecution would have been all over it like flies on the smelly stuff. But there was nothing there. The prosecution were clutching at straws. The judge made a very interesting observation during the case when he said, "Parliament makes the laws, my job is to uphold those laws." Well, Parliament makes laws basically under the direction of the EU. Anyone who thinks that Parliament has any real autonomy until such time as Brexit really comes about just isn't paying attention. And the lobbyists in the EU are all powerful, just like in the US. And anyone who thinks that the European Parliament makes the laws, again, you're not paying attention. The laws of the EU are effectively made by the lobbyists, lobbying the EU Commission, and then everything rolls out from there. The European Parliament is nothing more than a consultative body, a talking shop, to create the illusion of some democratic participation when actually none exists. So it's really time for humanity to make a very, very important decision. And that is, are you going to continue to allow the corporatocracy to kill off one person every 4 minutes? That's 15 people every hour, and this is just in the UK. And you know, some people have alluded that this is also part of the agenda to sort of keep the population down. But well, you know, hey, it certainly would seem that that plays a role here, because otherwise there might be a little bit more effort to try to bring such drugs as GC-MAF to market, as opposed to keep them away. Now, we have AV9.1 this coming Sunday, and I'm pleased to say that one of David's close associates will be attending that event and will be speaking about their experience and the persecution that they have endured under the guise of the MHRA and also their French equivalent OSLEP, where there are still people who are effectively on under house arrest almost, and that was all pending the outcome of this case in the UK. And let me tell you that the OSLEP and the MHRA, despite all their attempts at putting a positive spin from their perspective on David's incarceration, in reality they are spitting feathers. They were looking to get David jailed for 8 years, you know, for the heinous crime of saving lives. But of course, had nothing to do with that. It's about protecting Big Pharma. So the MHRA and their paymasters, the pharmaceutical industry, are not happy campers. And although OSLEP are trying to extradite at least one person from the UK to face similar charges to David in France, the fact that David got such a light sentence, well, I'm using that relatively in terms of MHRA looking for 8 years, it's going to be a bit difficult for them to pursue that extradition process. And let me tell you that whenever that comes to court, there will be massive support for anyone who is under threat of extradition. So if you're able to join us on Sunday, there are still some tickets available. The information on the event is available on the website alternativeview.co.uk, and I'll put some links under the video as well. So meanwhile, of course, although the last 2 weeks for me has been very, very much focused on reporting on the situation on David Noakes, and I just hope that I've been able to achieve some counterbalance to the British Bullshit Corporation and the deceptive broadcast that they've been putting out on this subject. But I haven't given up in the other areas, and I shall be back in court in London at Fetter Lane at the Rolls building on Tuesday, December the 11th, to challenge the IGAS injunction in North Nottinghamshire. And of course, you know, the mother frackers haven't yet got the message, and of course what they're looking to do will increase the risk of cancers even more with their carcinogenic gases and other contamination that are proven to come about from this industry. And so anyway, we shall be doing whatever we can to get the injunction lifted and allow people the right to exercise their protest against this abomination. And of course, in Lancashire, Quadrilla are still, you know, sitting there wondering what the hell they can do, because they know that once they fire up those pumps, they're going to trigger further seismic events. So, you know, it's been suggested that they are considering trying a nitrogen frack. Good luck with that. You know, it's one that works nicely on a computer. Hasn't yet been proven to be effective in the real world. And you know, Quadrilla have basically been shat upon by their partners AJ Lucas, because AJ Lucas let the cat out of the bag that basically they're going to be trying to persuade the British government to lift the level at which they have to stop fracking from the current 0.5. Well, you know, this is exactly what I predicted would occur when I was doing the Fractured Future tour back in 2013. It's a classic mission creep. You say what you think you need to say to be able to basically get your foot in the door, and then once you got your foot in the door, then you just keep pushing until the door bursts wide open. Well, AJ Lucas are desperate to try and prevent a mass exodus of their shareholders in Australia. They've recently sold are in the process of selling their drilling business to raise about 85 million because they need the cash. It's a company with a market capitalization of 306 million, but that just goes to show how many mug punters there are out there. But if there is any attempt to lift the traffic light system from the current levels, then the bottom line is there needs to be massive civil disobedience, particularly in the Fyle Peninsula, because that will be prima facie evidence that the corporations are in total control of the parliamentarians. Well, we know they are anyway, but you know, at the end of the day, the parliamentarians are also trying to protect their seats. So you know, this is going to get very, very interesting over the coming weeks. So if you're able to join us on Sunday at the Crown Plaza Hotel, then I'm sure it's going to be an extremely interesting day. And if nothing else, then you will be amongst like-minded people who are also realizing, or have realized now for some time, that something ain't right, and that humanity is in grave danger of being totally enslaved by a rampant corporatocracy. But it's not all going their way, and ultimately it is well and truly up to each and every one of us to protect the health and well-being of future generations. So thanks for joining me today. I will be back next week, but it will be probably Wednesday, because later today I'm expecting the skeleton arguments from IGAS to be delivered to me. And then actually I have to get my skeleton argument back to them by Tuesday afternoon, so that they have a week to then consider the case that I'm going to offer to counter their proposition to keep the injunction in place. So it's going to be Wednesday morning of next week at 8:30. So meanwhile, have a great weekend, and if you have a spare half hour, then please write to David Noakes and show him that he has massive support from all quarters throughout the country and indeed the world. So thanks for joining me this week. Thank you so much for following the David Noakes case. Thank you to all those people who made the effort to come to London. People came down from Scotland, from Wales, from the northeast, from all over. And I have absolutely no doubt that the packed public gallery every single day of the hearing certainly unsettled the prosecution. And, you know, who knows, it might have had just a little bit of bearing in the judge's final decision. So you have a great weekend, and I'll catch you with you next week.